Okay, so in the last class, hope you can hear me and you can see my screen. If not, let me know if there is any problem in viewing my screen or if you couldn't hear me. In the last class, we saw about threat environment, hacking technologies, hacking terminologies, and understanding hacking and what are all the types of attacks. And in today's class, we'll discuss about web application attacks and some network and server attacks, what is Google hacking and what is vulnerability scanning and why is it necessary. We'll go through this. So web application attacks. Web application attacks are performed on the websites in order to exploit the information that is hidden behind or any uh, resourceful information or fruitful information that is lying behind every website. So take example for a e-commerce site. You have credentials and you have your own account for that. Similar way, every user will be having an account. Every user will have their details in that. They will have their personal information. They may have their address, even their credit card numbers, debit card numbers could be stored in that. They might have a wallet in that with the money in. So these are all lot sensitive information which are very much valuable to any attacker. If you are feeding these information through the websites, so I need to find a loophole in my website to get access to those information and retrieve those information. So that is the motive behind these web applications. And all there are about 70 types of web application attacks, and not all these attacks will be applicable for every web application website. So we need to find out which attack will be suitable for uh, which web application. How do we determine the approach for these attacks, and how do we map the attacks with the website depends on the information gathering phase or the reconnaissance phase that we discussed during our in our previous class. So once the reconnaissance is done, and reconnaissance and scanning is done, these attacks come in the third step of hacking, gaining access. So first thing we'll see about we will discuss 5 types of attacks, web application attacks, 5 important types. Rest other types are like a variation of these, mostly the variation of these types only. The first one is a cross-site scripting attack. So cross-site scripting attack is something that could happen in any forums, like a web forum or something like social media where you could comment. Uh, Facebook is more secure now, but there are a lot of um, mediocre social media sites that are less known to people, which are not properly secure. Their cross-site scripting attack could happen, or even in Quora, some a website like Quora, cross-site scripting could happen. What it will do is, suppose I am an attacker, I will post a malicious script. It could be a JavaScript or a HTML script, and post it as a URL or embedded it in my comment. Take for example Quora. Anyone can put a question and anyone can provide answers. So I go to the answer section and create a hyperlink for a word and put my script in that. So when one of you goes and looks at the same question, if you click the hyperlink, the script which I wrote will run on your browser. So what I can do is I can write some query to fetch your cookies and session IDs, and what are all the browser data I could capture. Each and every bit I could capture and send it, write it as a document in my folder, or send it as an email, email to me. So that depends on the JavaScript I write. So this is how cross-site scripting works, and what I explained is called stored cross-site scripting. Reflected cross-site scripting is I run a script in my browser and get the output immediately. This is only this is of less value right now, because when I run it and get the output at my end, it won't be valuable. It is only to check uh, if there is a cross-site scripting vulnerability in my website. Reflected XSS is mostly used to check, whereas stored XSS are very common in the forum sites, or any other social media. DOM based is a bit complicated, and that uh, we'll skip it for now, because without a demo, DOM based won't be you won't be easy to understand. I don't know why am I saying this. Okay. Okay. Second, second one, we'll see about command injection. Command injection is when I instead of putting some queries in the search box, there will be any web application you open nowadays, there is a search box. Either it could be a Google search or a customized search box for that website. So in these search boxes, I should put something relevant. If I want to find something, find a document, I need to type the name of the document. If I want to find someone's employee number or employee's name, I could enter that. But instead of entering the relevant information, if I enter something related to the server command, and if I get a response for that, uh, it is called a command injection vulnerability. And the process, since the input I am feeding is a operating system related command, it's called a command injection. So for example, I have attached the snip here. If you see, there is a search box. Enter an IP address. But here, along with the uh, if it asks for IP address, I should enter only the IP address. But here I am entering IP address semicolon followed by PWD. PWD means present working directory. It's a Linux command. So when I click submit, I am getting the ping results. After the ping results, I could see what is the present working directory: /app/vulnerabilities/exec. This is the present working directory. So from this directories only, the website files are present. Now I know where the website file related files are present in that server, and the server IPs also I could gather using information in the information gathering phase. So whenever you create a search box for any web application, you should make sure what kind of inputs should be given. Uh, we, uh, the end user must not be able to run any OS related commands from the search box of that web application. The next is SQL injection. So SQL is, many of you might be aware, SQL is a language used to communicate between the database, communicate with the database, structured query language. So uh, instead of command putting OS commands, here I will be running SQL queries. Every website will have a database behind it. In order to contain juicy information or website related information, everything. if you are uploading files to a website, it will be stored in the database only. Or if you are uploading your photos, any attachments you are uploading, any content you are writing and saving will be uh, stored only in the database. So if there is SQL related vulnerability, using or manipulating the SQL queries, I could get the information from the backend database. SQL injections are of three types: union-based injection, error-based injection, and blind injection. So union-based injection is combining one or two SQL queries and running it uh, in the web application. Error-based injection is, I don't know what kind of SQL database is behind. It could be a MS SQL, it could be a Postgres SQL, or it could be a MySQL or a Oracle DB. It could be any database. I don't know what database or what version is this. What I do is I randomly put in a randomly select a few queries and see the output I am getting. If it is an error, I change my next query. Whatever the error it is throwing, based on that query, I will manipulate my other queries and feed it as an input. So I manipulate my queries based on the error. That is called error-based injection. Blind injection is carried out using tools. We have a tool called SQL map for that. What it will do is it will contain it's rarely it's not it is different from error based. It will randomly choose the queries, send it to the web application and get back the outputs. It will get the outputs for every queries. It won't get any error. Even if it is getting an error, it will ignore that. It won't do anything with that. It'll have a set of queries, send each and every one everything one by one and get the output and provide it as a report. So blind injection is mostly carried out with the use of tools and rarely done manually. So in the snip you can see these are basic SQL query statements just for your understanding. So this is if you see the web server and the database, this is the structure of any web application. This is a basic structure, I would say. There will be a web server, and behind that there will be an application server where the website related files are hosted, and behind that there will be a database. Uh, so uh, I will be inputting the SQL statements in the web application. So clickjacking. Clickjacking is uh, it's a very a low level vulnerability, but the impact that it could create is very high. What if a website is not properly secure? What I could do is, uh, if you could see the below snip, take for example, there is a bank website where a pay option is there. I could copy the URL for that pay button and paste it in a new web page and change the button to play. And this URL I will be sending it to you through an email. I could create a JPG of a game and make you think like you are going to play some game. But when you click the play button, uh, you will be redirected to that pay button of the bank website. So this is like the last step of any attack. There will be a lot of information gathering and social engineering that will have to go before that. And oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. Uh, so basically, what fitting a legitimate website's contents in a malicious website in order to uh, perceive the end user to click on that, like a clickbait. Uh, uh, yeah, something similar to clickbaits, but not exactly that. The magnitude of damages that clickjacking could cause could be severe. It, it might not be like it doesn't have to be necessarily the bank website or money related. It could also be your Facebook account that someone wants to access. They could change it and send it this way. Path traversal. So path traversal is uh, yeah, as we saw earlier in OS command injection. This is the path of a directory which contains the files related to the website. App slash vulnerability slash exe. This is called the path. What I will do is in the web application, if the inputs are not, if it is not sanitized properly or the input validation is not being done properly, I will be able to browse through these directories. In the snip, if you see /etc /password, this is a uh, this is a path to a file called PASSWD. So what you are seeing below is the contents of that file. Similarly, I can also navigate to this path /app /vulnerability /exec. So if I give that as a path, it will list down all the file names, whatever the files that are present under that directory. So this should not be happening at the website end. Whatever contents that is present in the server should not be exposed to the end user by any means. That's why there will be a lot of security testing at the code level. Why during development itself, there will be static analysis, there will be dynamic analysis to test your code for these kind of vulnerabilities. Once the website is ready, there will be manual security testing, penetration testing that will be done, and along with that, vulnerability scanning using automated tools that will also be going on to track all these security flaws, and so that these kinds of attacks does not happen in any website. We will be seeing about vulnerability scanning concepts at the end of today's session. So apart from those 5 types of attacks, these are like other list of web application attacks. Maybe you could discuss this in the advanced classes that is being planned. You can check that with your moderator uh, later. A hacker doesn't restrict himself to these known types of attacks. Hacking is basically what we said. It's finding new ways. If I found a ways, if I knew there is an attack, something like this, the developer can fix it the very next day. A hacker has to still find ways to get into it, uh, even if it is properly patched. That's why there will be these attacks will be evolving over time. Websites also will be earlier it was websites, now we call it web application, uh, just due to the human interaction. And the same way hacking and these attacks will also be evolving over time. So network and server attacks, these are network and server attacks are uh, mainly due to uh, two major flaws. One is misconfiguration. Suppose I create a new server or purchase a new server. If I am running with a default configuration, uh, there is a possibility of, yeah, of that server being attacked. For example, when I create a server, the only the admin account will be there. Say the admin username is admin and the password is root. So it will be default for every server that I create in the network, or it is provided by the vendor. Microsoft sets the first user as administrator. Uh, so it is common for all the accounts. What I should do is I should rename that to something else, maybe related to some my organization or my name. We need to change it. So running with the default configuration would lead to a server attack. And misconfiguration attacks. Misconfiguration is have to if I am installing some program or an application, if I don't properly configure that, if I don't run, if Windows Defender is running, but I have stopped the services, that is kind of a misconfiguration, or it could get stopped due to some other services. There could be a clash between two services running at the same time. These are some things, or these could be seen using our Windows alerts. But if we ignore that, there is a possibility of misconfiguration in this. It could happen in the OS level or at the application level, or anywhere. Never run with the default configuration, and also check the the configuration or changes that you are making is secure, and there are no loopholes into that. So this is what the hacker will first check. They will check for any misconfiguration in the securities, using the scanning or comparing with the default configuration that every vendor gives. Vendor in the sense, it could be Red Hat or Solaris or Microsoft, or Apple in case of MacBooks. Everyone gives a default configuration, and these default configuration are publicly available. They An attacker could see what is the configuration on your laptops or your assets, and what is the default configuration. By comparing these, and if he could approach for the attack. And website defacement. A website defacement is actually an attack on it is an attack on the website, but the actual changes has to happen at the servers. What it means is, the server content, the website contents will be present on that server only. If I want to deface or change the look of the website, I shouldn't be changing it at the website. I shouldn't be changing it at the browser. I need to change it at the uh, original contents, where the files are actually residing. If you are in some of the websites, you would have seen .html or .jsp page or .aspx pages. So these pages will be present in the web server. I need to trace it through where, under which directory or under which folder these are present, and then I need to replace those files with my file, whatever content I want to put it in. In case of hacktivism or suicide hackers, you can see they will be putting their political ideology or their political agenda, or their logos or something. So they need to remove those files and place these files in those places. That's why website defacement is actually a server side attack, and not really a website uh, attack. Distributed denial of service, this we have discussed in multiple uh, instances. So once I get uh, if I once I know the IP address of a server or a website through information gathering, I can uh, I can send customized packets with in customized throughput. How many packets I can send? 60,000 packets per minute, and cause damage to that server. So just to make it make the website and the server and its contents unavailable for others. Uh, 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 a distributed DDoS attack using several botnets could even damage the hardwares of a server. And firewall attacks. Firewall is a why we have included here is a firewall is a network device, and it will be like the second or first layer of defense for any organization. So without bypassing the firewall, you won't be able to reach the web servers or database or any other network components. Well, there are two types of major attacks to evade firewall. One is IP address spoofing. Spoofing in the sense duplicate. You could understand as a duplicate. First, I need to understand how is if there is a firewall in the network. In the reconnaissance fields, I will be there are specific tools to identify if there is a firewall, or even a simple scan could reveal me uh, what are all the ports that are open. If there are specific ports open, and I could send a specially crafted package to those ports and get the response. And if or I could run a nmap scan. A simple nmap scan can show if the server is, I mean, if the port is open or closed or filtered. If it is showing as filtered, mostly there is a firewall. And uh, by changing these nmap scans, I can find the IP address of the firewall. And once I get the IP address, I can create another instance instance like same as that device, so that any legitimate traffic that has to go through that firewall gets redirected to the IP address of the device that I had created. That is one kind of firewall attack. This is not really an attack on the device itself, but rather redirecting the packets through a different channel instead of going through the legitimate channel. And tiny fragment attacks. So fragmentation is a process in that happens in the layer 3 packets. So if a packet is huge, it will be broken down into fragments. Say there is a suppose if there is a form in a website, uh, like you need to fill out your resume. You are filling a resume online and submitting it. That form will be that form will be pretty huge. It could be a 2 MB file or a 2 MB page. The contents could be huge, that it is of 2 MB. So this will be broken down into lots of packets. That is called fragmented packets. So what the attacker will do is uh, he will be fragmenting the packets using even even using ping. We can fragment the packets. We can put what size of packets I could send. So I can make the packets so small that it that the firewall doesn't see from what source IP address it is coming from, and it could go undetected. These malicious fragmented packets can go undetected through the firewall channel. That is one kind of firewall attack. So actually, these 5 types are major network devices attacks. And yes, there are no just like web application attack. There are no specific kind of attacks for a network and network devices. It is completely based on information gathering and reading out what if there are any misconfiguration, or if there are any security patches that is not applied. If you could you every time you update your Windows system, you might have noticed the security patches applied. If the security patch is not applied, that could also lead to a vulnerability for if you haven't applied for a long time. So we need to assess these things in the reconnaissance phase and have to approach the attack uh, for network devices. So the third topic for today is Google hacking. So as the name suggests, it's actually not hacking Google, but we'll be using Google to to get some fruitful information. How we will be doing it is, right now you'll be searching Google. You'll be opening the Google and you'll be putting the data. I mean, entering the key words, whatever you want to search, whatever you want to search, you just enter it and click search. But hackers around the world have come up with certain keywords that you could use in Google to filter your data and provide filter as much possible, so that you could get what exactly you wanted. In order to understand that, first you need to know how Google works. How Google works through a process called indexing. Indexing is done using spiders. Spiders or spidering is, it will, every time someone searches some terms, um, if there are two people in a room, one searches say ABC, the Google abc.com, Google will go learn about that site. It will run a scan and uh, to learn how many pages are in that website, all the pages, all the URLs, all the subdirectories. It will learn. It'll learn and it will create a cache in its own place. So that is called spidering. So once the spidering is done, it will create a big chunk of data. Chunk of data will have all the sub pages, all the links, all the photographs, everything. It will have for each and every website. It will create such a data after spidering and keep it inside. So when you search, it won't actually give the contents of that site. It will only give the contents of the indexing that Google has done. So that is how Google works. So you need uh, you using once with these indexed results, what we will be doing is we'll insert these docs or keywords and filter the data. Here, if you see, these are some of the very few of the Google Docs. Once you could post it, you can see what I mean. Once you could pay, search it using these, you can see a difference in the key in the results. For example, entitled co- colon index of server dot at. This will search for in the it will search in the title for a keyword index of server. If you see the second command, in title, uh, it will look for these words, index of server at, in the title in the website microsoft.com. So the first one will return results from all the websites that Google had already indexed, whereas the second command will give the results only related to the website microsoft.com. Uh, Once you get these, there are also different docs to search for your file type. File type, you might be aware. file type colon PPT or file type colon PDF. If you put, you could get the only the uh, those matching extensions. So in title, in URL, and all in title, all in URL are some of the common Google Docs where I have listed some. You could you can just copy paste and search it later. We have a website completely for to find these docs. It's called a Google Hacking Database. You could just I have provided the URL as well. So here you could find all the docs, how to use those docs, and what will be the results that it will be good that it will provide. So here, if you see in URL WooCommerce exporter, if you search for this, it will give advisories and vulnerabilities. And this the fifth line number, if you could see, it will yeah, we are asking for username plus password. Extension type is YML file. Uh, so that could that will return the files. It could be a notepad file or any kind of file that which had a keyword password in it. I think we have a question. Yes, can you please type your question? Someone has raised their hand. Hello. uh, so anyone else have questions? I think this is the last slide of the topic. We just have one more topic. I can take questions if you have any till now. Okay. So so what how useful these docs are in the sense, if I am creating a new website that is going to have sensitive information from the end user, I'm going to collect their Aadhaar card for some reason. I may even if there are a lot of provide a lot of vendors who provide small amounts of financial loans nowadays. So they will be collecting sensitive information uh, or sensitive documents from end users. First thing, once when they create a website, they could go to Google. Once the website goes public, the website is available to public, they could go to Google and try these Docs, or try these commands and filters and see if any sensitive information is being leaked from their website. That is major uh, use use of this GHDB. Yeah, docs are basically the commands, these keywords that we could use along with the Google's keywords. I mean the search words. Um, okay. You'll be going. You'll open a Google, and how you will search a term. If you are want to learn basics of cybersecurity, you can put basics of cybersecurity. But if you want I need only PDFs related to basics of cybersecurity. What I will do is basics of cybersecurity, file type colon PDF, or file type colon PPT. I will put this. So this file type colon, that is what we call it as dorks. Uh, Basic keywords used in these uh, in these Google search. Okay. So next we'll go through vulnerability scanning concepts. So this was actually due to the since we skipped yesterday's session for various reasons. What we'll do is we'll be uh, splitting or condensing the three session into two sessions. One topic we'll be discussing additionally today, and on Friday we'll go through five topics for the completion of this session. Uh, I won't be available. I won't be available tomorrow for uh, I got an impromptu calls, and so we'll finish this session on Friday. Uh, we'll have some continuity related to vulnerability scanning on Friday, and that could be a bit for longer session. We'll have a break in between. So vulnerability scanning. What is a vulnerability scanning? Why is it necessary, and how it is done? What vulnerability? We it is basically a weakness or a loophole in any structure or in a IT infrastructure or a website. Well, we vulnerability scanning is we need to scan this infrastructure or all these in network elements, the entire websites, to find the what are all the vulnerabilities present in them. So so far there are a lot of known vulnerabilities, and we have data websites with databases which contain details about these vulnerabilities, how we could fix it, where you could find these vulnerabilities. If it is a Microsoft server, what are all the vulnerabilities that will be applicable? If it is a Linux server, what are all the vulnerabilities that will be applicable? If it is a mainframe, what are all the set of vulnerabilities for that? And depending on the version, for Windows 10, for Windows 2012 server, for Windows 2008 server, for MS SQL database, or for Oracle Linux database, each and everything we have databases for with the list of known vulnerabilities. So these vulnerability scanning tools will run scans on our targets, and it will check for these known vulnerabilities to see if there is anything that is present in her. For example, uh, I take a server, say a Windows 2016 server, and I configure I provide that server IP address as a target in my vulnerability scanner tool. uh, this tool will first identify the IP address. It will ping to see if the target is alive. So once it pings, it will know if the target is alive. The next thing it will do is it will search for what OS or OS is running on that. It will, once it gets the details of that OS, from the known vulnerability database, it will collect all the vulnerabilities related to that OS version, and it will run tests against that target server. Each and every vulnerability will be checked. It will check for any default configuration. If you are using uh, yeah, administrator account as same as that, it will alert you. If you haven't set any password expiry time, a server should have password expiry time. It should be a password should be rotated at least 45 days or 90 days. Maximum of 90 days is the password should be rotated. If the password is set to not expiry, it will be alerted in a vulnerability. Or if there are any applications that is not updated, say a Lightroom is running in my server, and that application is as a latest version of 5.10, but I am running with 5.8, it will say that there is a new version available for this application and I need to update it. That will also be reported as a vulnerability. So vulnerability scanning tools are very highly advanced, and they will just we just need to mention our target and just wait for the results. It will give They will tell you what is the vulnerability, how it could, if there is how it could be exploited, if there are any known exploits present, and how we could fix those vulnerabilities. All these things we could receive it in the vulnerability scanning report. So what this vulnerability scanning report will help us is, it will help us to understand how secure our network or how secure our website is. All these vulnerabilities will have ranking based on 0 to 10. If it is 10, it is of high severity. If it is of 6, it is of medium severity. If it is 1 or 2, it will be of low severity. So based on this, we could calculate what is the risk that is in our system. Uh, if even if it is a low severity risks of risk rating 1, there might be a known exploit. And how can I remediate that? That also I could discuss based on these vulnerability reports. Yeah, vulnerability tools we'll see in the next one. Vulnerability scanning is can be done only using tools and cannot be done manually. So here I have listed some of the common vulnerability scanners in the market. Nessus, QualisGuard. Uh, Nessus and QualisGuard are like the market leaders, commonly used in a lot of most of the organizations. And Akinetics and Vega. Vega is a open source version. Even you could download and install it in your laptop, or if you have a VMware, you could install and run those machines for vulnerability scans. Akinetics is another vendor, same as all these works on the same pattern. They have the database or vulnerability database. We need to select we can select this signature, or even if we don't, that the tool will select the signatures based on the OS version of the target. So Nessus, QualisGuard, Akinetics, Vega, we can scan both network components, be it a firewall or a server. Uh, Storage systems, even those you could scan using these tools. And Burp Suite and OWASP Zap are specific for web applications. You can use it only for to scan web applications, and cannot scan servers. The best one is QualisGuard. QualisGuard is highly advanced and provides comprehensive report. Nessus is next to that. Nessus is a bit not user friendly, not as friendly as Qualys Guard. So, but they are commercial products. They are highly priced. Not uh, if you are looking for something for an individual use, you could go with Vega. So the steps in vulnerability scanning for first thing is network discovery. Network discovery or identification, we could say identification of assets, means what I need to scan first. I may it could be a huge network with 50 Windows servers, say 200 Windows servers, or 150 Linux servers, and 50 mainframe systems, along with the desktops. And I might have a storage system separately. First thing, I need to find out what I'm going to scan. Am I going to scan only these, or only 10 or 50 of the Windows servers? What I need to identify my targets first, and then configure for the vulnerability scanning. So once the scanning is done, I'll receive the reports eventually. And using those reports, I need to analyze the risks. What are all that has been identified? How many high severity risks are there? How many medium severity risks are there? How many low severity risks are there? What can I ignore? What can I not ignore? What can I fix it immediately? Which can I delay? Which ones I can delay, even so that there won't be any impact. Even there are high severity vulnerabilities that can cause low impact of damage, and there are low severity vulnerabilities that could cause a potentially high damage based on the uh, placement of that resource, and what based on the contents of the of that server, contents of that resource. So that's why analyzing the result is very important step after vulnerability scanning. A security engineer has to provide the recommendations on analysis of that. So once you analyze the result, you prepare a separate report on what is relevant, taking only the things that are relevant and leave out things that are irrelevant, or mark it as a null, and send it to the teams. There will be a separate team for Windows server management, and separate each and every platform will have separate teams to manage those servers. You need to approach the appropriate team. You may have to explain what is the problem with that. You may also have to explain why we need to do that. Sometimes that even if it is a website, we might find a vulnerability in the scanner tools, and the developer not might not understand. The developers will have no idea about the vulnerability at all. It is security is only at a booming phase. When people are only getting awareness about it in the very recent times. Not all developers are aware of security, or these vulnerabilities that could arise raised due to by these vulnerability scanning tools. So a security engineer has to be able to uh, report these findings and explain what are all the vulnerabilities, uh, and so that they could take appropriate action. So these steps are common for both network elements as well as web applications. So once after finding these vulnerability, or after reporting these vulnerabilities, the developers or the server administrators, they will fix it and will get back to you again. After fixing it, again you will have to start from this step. You'll have to run a vulnerability scan, check if the remediation is working. Once the vulnerabilities are fixed or remediated, it should not be showing again in the report after scanning. So you need to run a verification scan and again check the results and report it again. So in the first round, if you find a vulnerability and fix it, it shouldn't be showing up in the verification scan again. Only if it doesn't show in the verification scan, you can consider that vulnerability as closed or remediated. I'm sorry that is not being captured. I'll put it in the next class slide of these contents. That's it for our today's class. We have ended it on time. So next class is going to be a bit longer, a lengthy one. And so these are all the topics that we'll go through in next class. Types of vulnerability, penetration testing concept. Penetration testing concepts will be much similar to vulnerability scanning, but it is done manually. We'll see what are all the differences and what is compliance and data privacy. Cryptography, encryption, decryption, you might have heard. We'll discuss how it helps in securing traffic or a website as well as the servers. And we'll go through some cloud computing securities and security breaches that has recently happened in cloud networks. I can wait for a couple of minutes to take your questions. If you have any, you can post it in the chat. You mean SQL injection? Yes, we have only one class left. That will be 1.5 hour session, because we were discussing 3 topics a day, and today we discussed 4 topics, and in next class we'll be discussing 5 topics. So the topics will be complete. Only we have squeezed it to 5 days session to 4 days session. We are not skipping any topics at all. We have discussed 15 topics all together. And SQL scripting, SQL injection. Okay, SQL injection is, just imagine this setup. There is a web server and there is a database behind it. Basically, I am putting inputs that are not intended. For example, there is a username fee. Whenever you open a website, it will ask for credentials, username and password. So username should be ABC01. Passwords could be XYZ $123. So this is the usual inputs that we should give in username and password. But instead of this, I am putting something. Instead of these, I am putting an apostrophe in username, and password also I am putting an apostrophe. Means the web application won't be able to handle it. It will take my input. It will take it to the database. If a database sees something like an apostrophe, it will get confused. It won't understand what is the input. So that's what we are confusing the database and the website to get information that it is not supposed to give. In the snip, you can see in the user ID field, the attacker is putting apostrophe or uh, tick 1 tick equals tick 1. What it means is database understands conditions. Here he is giving a condition where saying 1 equals 1. 1 equals 1 is true. It's a true condition. The database I will understand as a yes, 1 is equal to 1, and it will throw the content of the first column. So database will have tables, and every table will have column. So when an attacker sends an input like this, the database will get confused and throw the contents, start throwing the contents of the database. So if I put 2 equals 2, it will say, it will throw the contents of the second column. So select star from you here. If you see, select star from users where names equal to, select star means select is a keyword, SQL keyword. Star means any, from is a keyword, users means it's a table in database, where is a keyword, name is a column under users uh, table. So what the attacker is trying to get is, from the table users under column name, send me the first entry. So the database will throw the first name present, maybe say A for Arun is the first entry in the database. The database will return the name Arun to the hacker in the website itself. It will throw that output in the website itself when you enter these malicious command. That is how SQL injection works. This is a simple command. There are a lot of nowadays it has very much evolved, and union based injection is only could breach such databases now. Complex SQL union based queries we'll have to structure to get the contents of the database. So I guess I've explained it clearly. And reverse engineering is not in the scope of this class. It comes under advanced cyber analytics. Reverse engineering is basically restructuring the malware. So if there is a malware, I will be reading it based on its behavior. I will be learning it and to see how it works. It's not in the scope of this, and yeah, as I told, you can check with the moderator for the advanced version of this class. So that's it for today. We are already 7 minutes late, and if you have questions, you can come on Friday. We'll have a longer session, and that will be the last and we'll wind up this course along with that. Okay, thank you.